Hi, I'm Aaron Pruzan. I'm board chair of Protect Our Water Jackson Hole, and for this year we're doing a podcast of our annual report instead of a printed annual report. It's going to be really fun. I hope everybody watches it. We got a lot of work done in 2025, and a lot of people, both our staff and board members, are going to highlight that work. 2025 does represent a turning point because the county and the town have approved our wastewater management plan, and now we're actually moving into implementation phase. And this is a much more challenging phase. This is a long road to hoe, but 2026 is exciting because this year we're actually going to be in the ground and we're going to be doing work that's going to improve water quality both in the Jackson Hole Aquifer and on the Snake River. Let's get started.
To understand the situation in Hoback, let's begin with the geology and the hydrology of the area. If you're looking for water, you need to drill down about 180 feet into the Bear Creek Formation. And that's the water source for our folks in Hoback. That source is polluted. It's polluted because of septic tanks and leach fields. We're too high and too cold for leach fields to work right. And so the street I live on, JW Drive, this development dates from 1983. Each of these homes are on about 1/3 of an acre, and each has a septic tank and a leach field. But there were almost no regulations in 1983. There's no way Teton County would approve leach fields on 1/3 of an acre today. The problem with the water here is that it's high in nitrates, and nitrates causes problems, especially for young children and for pregnant mothers. Hopefully next year in 2027, we should have flowing drinking water in a new municipal drinking water system down in the Hoback area. And we're not only going to be able to take care of the drinking water problem, but we're also going to put the first fire hydrants in this area. Right now, the closest fire hydrant's up at Munger Mountain, 4 miles to the north. 2025 is when we were able to raise the funds necessary to build this $7 million system. POW-JH went to the Board of County Commissioners and got a grant of $3 million from the Water SPET initiative. Then we went to the Teton Conservation District and put in a grant request for another $250,000. This is the largest grant that the Teton Conservation District has ever given. Then the Wyoming Water Development Commission has chipped in another $1.2 million. We've also requested and been approved for a loan from the State Revolving Fund for some $1.5 million, plus the $900,000 that the county also contributed for 3 fire hydrants down here. This all adds up to some $7 million in order to build a municipal drinking water system. So the district has also raised another $55,000 to do a wastewater feasibility study. That started in February of 26. We should get the results of that by this summer, which will identify the alternatives for addressing this problem of wastewater, and again, put approximate price tags on it. The staff at Protect Our Water, Jackson Hole, plus the board, we've been able to make significant progress. So we're real pleased with how far we've gotten over the last 4 or 5 years.
My name is Eloise. I'm the office manager here at POW-JH, and I'm excited to talk to you today about one of our most excited deliverables from 2025, the Clean Water Guide. We received some funding from the EPA and put together this comprehensive guide for all things water related in Teton County. I just want to acknowledge all of the collaboration that went into this from TCD and a bunch of other community members. And Creative Curiosity put together all the lovely graphics for us and made this into what it is. A lot of the water issues in Teton County are kind of complex science and policy, and this really breaks that down into something that people can use and understand in their everyday life. Everyone who lives here drinks water. So if you have a private well at your house, things you can do to keep that safe and tested and clean. Or if you live in town, information about where the public wells are and where that water is coming from and how that's being tested and regulated. There's some information about stormwater, which is any runoff from rain, snow, spring melt, and how that is being channeled and filtered throughout the county. We wanted the information in the guide to be really specific for the people living in Teton County. So for example, like when to get your septic system serviced and how to get it serviced and what's the proper interval for doing that. There's some fun facts in here as well. Like one dog's waste may seem insignificant, but it's estimated that 11,000 dogs in Teton County leave over 8,000 pounds of poop per day. And we don't want that to end up in our water. There's some things that people just don't realize are affecting the water quality. And there's a lot of best practices in here of how everyone can just make small changes in their day-to-day life. And that will see a huge impact on the quality of water we have here.
My name is Matt Bambach, and I'm the Water Resources Director here at PowJH. So one of the things that stands out in my mind as a success from last year is the well testing partnership that we had with Teton Conservation District. So back in 2020, the end of 2023, my coworker Dan and I, we wrote an EPA grant through their environmental education program. And this partnership is funded through that grant, and it allowed for TCD's well test kits, which are typically $50, to be made available for free for members of the public. And so through that, we had about 215 participants over the last year, which is about a 100% increase in what TCD usually gives out every year. And so those people got really important water quality information on their drinking water, because here in Wyoming, no one checks your well water if you don't. But the other thing we're really excited about is the data being used from those well tests is going to be aggregated, to create new drinking water quality maps, which will show hot spots of nitrates and other contaminants around the valley. So there has been one iteration of this water quality mapping project that's happened in the past. That was from data collected before 2021. And so we're really interested to see if any existing hotspots like Hoback Junction or right near Pub Place on Highway 89 have expanded in extent, have gotten a bit more extreme, higher concentrations, just how things are changing. It'd be helpful to have more than one piece of information to look at that. Fortunately, many people in our community, I would say the majority, have very high quality drinking water, probably some of the best quality well water you could find anywhere in the country. And unfortunately, there are members of the community that are drinking water that's contaminated by wastewater. Are we recognizing the canary in the coal mine that is Hoback Junction's drinking water? That is what happens when septic waste doesn't get flushed downstream right away, and it has an opportunity to stick around.
My name is Jennifer Evans, and I'm the Advocacy Director with Protect Our Water Jackson Hole. One of our greatest successes in 2025 was having the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality agree to create an environmental monitoring program for the wastewater treatment plant with the town of Jackson. Since 2012, there has not been groundwater monitoring at the wastewater treatment plant. The monitoring that did happen back in 2012, back to 2008, did give us the idea that there might be infiltration into the groundwater of ammonia. So this is why we really wanted to get this reinstated. This is going to give us a year-round picture of what the treatment looks like. This is specifically important for winter because a lagoon wastewater treatment plant loses biological activity in the winter in cold temperatures. So this is what we're particularly interested in looking at to see if there is ammonia entering the groundwater in those winter months. Protect Our Water is really excited to also be a part of this process, ensuring that the plan really looks like what we had hoped for when we filed this petition, to make sure we're getting, like I said, those winter months included, and to make sure there's various points that monitoring wells are drilled that would give us the best idea of whether that groundwater infiltration of ammonia is happening. So we hope that by the end of the current year, 2026, that we would see those wells drilled and the monitoring would happen. So once this testing is initiated, we will probably need at least 1 year before any next steps could be taken, so we have a full idea of what is going on. But if this monitoring tells us that there is infiltration into the groundwater of ammonia, that means the wastewater treatment plant is out of its permit. It's not allowed to infiltrate into the groundwater, and that could mean we could take next steps to ensure that the treatment in Jackson is better. And as it is just upstream from a wild and scenic portion of the river, we think that it needs to be held to that standard and to the standard that our comprehensive plan lays out for the town of Jackson and Teton County.
My name is Dan Ois. I'm the Development Director for Protect Our Water, Jackson Hole. And in 2025, I think I kind of started seeing a shift in terms of being here for a couple of years now, seeing how we engage with donors, how they engage with our programs, our priorities. And I started to see not only engagement, but investment in the future of our water quality and seeing Protect Our Waters as leaders in that endeavor. Clarity and focus seems to help. This is a very much of a complex problem. If we talk to a scientist, if we talk to a lawyer, we can kind of get into the weeds pretty quickly. And so I think our job as a nonprofit leading this issue on water quality, we have to be quite clear about where people can come in and understand the problem on a very basic level. So I feel like in terms of our strategy this year, we've been really building on our levels of clarity and consistency across all of our platforms this year. I think in the first couple of years that we were here, POW-JH really wasn't on the board. I mean, we rebranded in 2019 from Friends of Fish Creek to Protect Our Water, Jackson Hole, just because of the fact that, you know, the problems we were seeing at Fish Creek were happening, you know, valley-wide. And I think in the first couple of years I was here, like just building that awareness of who we are, what we're doing, was really important because we had to engage everyone to understand like that we are facing problems and we'll be facing these problems down the road. But in 2025, I felt like we are kind of been pivoting a little bit because now we're going from outreach and education to really trying to guide implementation, to having a voice in implementation, which includes levels of projects, monitoring expansion. You know, I know even this year alone, we had a monitoring expansion program that we put together working with USGS and TCD, and putting that project together, getting some levels of funding from levels of foundations here in the community, and then bringing that whole package to our donor base, who within one night filled the rest of the delta of that need. And I think that's pretty much my job, is trying to find those vehicles and create that kind of harmonious synergy to get everyone involved. And I feel like that's been the biggest investment in POW-JH, is that level of trust in us to continue doing that.
My name is Marty Peterson, and I'm one of the board members at POW-JH. And I'm here to describe to you some of our successes that we've had in 2025 related to regulations in Teton County and protecting our wetlands and our waters. What I'm describing in that early success was an amendment to the land development regulations, section 5.1.1. And that process was where POW-JH members of the board and the staff served as advisors and experts to the Teton County elected officials and staff, and worked together to create new amendments to those as they were reviewing those regulations. And so in that amendment, we were able to do some revisions as well as create new standards for some of the setbacks, which is basically the distance you have from your wetlands or your stream to your building structures. And one of the first amendments was a change in the distance for the setback for wetlands, originally at 30 feet, expanding that to 50 feet. The additions to the setbacks included the distance up to 100 feet for streams, natural lakes, and ponds. There's still work to be done. We still feel that there can be an expansion of these setbacks to additional waterways, such as irrigation ditches, fens, and reservoirs. In addition to that, POW-JH board and staff are also advising the town of Jackson as they continue to look towards their land development regulations and how they want to make these amendments and updates to protect our waters. There isn't another organization in the valley that's approaching it this way or addressing it with solutions. So I think there's a sense of comfort or shared mission with the members of the valley. They may not have time to devote the resources or the thought even to their protecting their water.
Well, another thing I'm really proud of from last year, 2025, is the agreement we have with the USGS to expand water quality monitoring at their stream gauge on Fish Creek in Wilson. Prior to us working together with them, I believe it's the Conservation District had been paying for pretty much the standard baseline parameters, which are gauge height or discharge and water temperature. I would say if we're going to look at only one thing, water temperature is a good thing to look at. However, because of how much research has gone into Fish Creek and the incoming Fish Creek watershed plan, which we expect sometime this spring, and the nature of the impairment, which is excessive algae blooms caused by nutrient pollution, unfortunately you can't directly measure in-stream nutrient concentrations in a creek because that's plant food that's being instantly eaten by the algae that's taking over the bottom of the creek. And so looking for, we call them response variables or different ways to parse apart what's happening in the creek as this nutrient loading is taking place is really important. And so what we did was we finished the suite of baseline parameters that we talk about and really would be ideal if we were collecting them on every creek around the county, which is in addition to temperature, we're looking at oxygen, pH, specific conductance, and turbidity. So this is an agreement with USGS that runs until September 2026. And we're most interested in what's happening in the creek in the summer months, kind of between May and September, because that's when the recreation season is, and that's when people are going to be coming in contact with those impairments, and it's when most of the plant activity takes place as well. So we'll be able to learn a lot more from that data we're now collecting.
So I'm Phil Powers. I'm the executive director here at Protect Our Water Jackson Hole. What's interesting to me about 25 is that we really came to understand what we're up against. And I think we also made progress in helping the community and the elected officials understand that same thing. Just to be clear, we're in a valley in which we've placed thousands of septic systems right into what is effectively our aquifer. The Snake River, just to be kind of clear about it, the Snake River flows down its channel, as we all see and love and recreate within. It also flows through the gravel on either side, miles really on either side. And that's where our septic systems reside. That's also where our wells reside. But the reality is that we are releasing our effluent into the same place where we're pulling our drinking water. And that's just not sustainable. We cannot do that. We cannot keep doing that. We're faced with the prospect of laying miles and miles and miles of sewer line. And it's just not a viable prospect to imagine neighborhoods doing this for themselves. It's just too expensive. So I think I think the other big revelation in 2025 is that we need some sort of unified authority to pull this all together and both access bigger money, be capable of taking on debt if necessary, but to operate this as some version of a unified authority. I've got a board, they're all engaged. They're all engaged in different ways, but a good half of them are engaged on an almost daily basis in this effort. And that leads me to argue that we're in a very sweet spot. We're in a place where the community is coming to understand what we're up against. The community is coming to understand what we need to do. We at Protect Our Water Jackson Hole need to provide the guidance. But that's, multiplied by the fact that I've got a board of individuals who are both smart, capable, and experienced. That's 3 things, not 2. But willing to help. And so our staff of 5 really feels more like a team of 15.